What is up, Teach Better family? My name is Jeff, and this is your Wednesday wake up for January 4th, 2023. Believe it or not, I've got my good buddy Brad Hughes with me here. We're going to dive into some stuff. We're going to talk about some really important, very serious things, which is why we're smiling. And we're going to have some fun as well. So hopefully you're dropping in. If you are watching live, drop in the comments. Let us know where you're watching live from. Are you getting ready for school? Do you still have a week off? What are you drinking? I got my coffee. Brad, do you have coffee, tea? What do you got? Anything?
Yeah, I've got very, very, very weak coffee here.
I love it. If you are listening later on the Teach Better Talk podcast, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you leave a rating and a review, we really appreciate that as well. If you're watching live, do me a favor. Hit the share button right now, whatever platform you're on. Share this out to your friends, family, colleagues, whatever. We'll be back in about 17 seconds. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Mr. Bradley Hughes.
Mr. Jeff Gargas, good morning, good morning, good morning.
The screen just looks a little bit better today. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I did take some time to make sure that I sprayed the camera off, so it was squeaky clean. I wanted to make sure that I'm broadcasting here from Canada in the highest definition possible, which I think is like 260p. When you get north of the 49th, it's like 260 pixels is about the highest.
It's 260. Yeah, I thought you guys were at 720A.
Only in certain metropolitan areas, Jeff.
Gotcha. So it's awesome having you here. Obviously, Ray is not here. You're here instead. Ray's actually out with training with a school this morning. Got like half the team on the road, I feel like, today. Out training, which is always fun to see and stuff. But you reached out and you said, hey, listen, I'm not back at school till next week.
Right.
So can I jump on Wednesday wake up? And at that point, I didn't realize Ray was out. And I'm like, yeah, let's give Ray the morning off. Well, turns out Ray's actually already in her car driving, so we didn't really give her the morning off. But I'm glad you're here. I think everyone watching is going to be glad you're here. Typically, you're on our Wednesday, or on our Sunday evening show, which, if I'm being honest, I don't watch as much as I should. But I listen to it a lot and stuff too, though. So it's exciting having you here. So tell me what is going on with you. How has your break been? You still got this week before you got to get back into everything in school next week. How's life been over the last couple of weeks? And did you actually take some time off?
Yeah, I sure did. And life has been great. Our holiday break has been super with family and activities in, activities out. I was just sharing with you before we got on air here that I'm trying something a little bit different this year as I sort of contemplate getting back into the school building. I'm a school principal here in Ontario, and typically I have a big emotional and logistical jam up the weekend before school, as probably a lot of educators do, where you realize how much you want to have prepared both physically, emotionally, and mentally. And then you realize you've only got a little bit of time to do it. So I'm trying to dip a little bit in this week. So I am trying to be intentional about continuing to take needed time off to stay connected and be kind of refreshed and re-energized. But a little bit dipping into work every day is going to hopefully help serve me and our school community well this week, Jeff.
So I'm going to actually be to share a little more tactical on that, because I think that's something that could be really useful for folks that are not yet back in school and are trying to get the most out of this next week here while also preparing. When you say a little bit, like how much are you each day putting into prep work for going back versus continuing to enjoy your time off? Is there like is it an 80-20 split? Is it a 60-40? Like, or do you just winging it? Which is fine too.
I'm going to say winging it plus. So mornings, I'm devoting mornings to schoolwork. So I'm devoting mornings to anticipating communication that I need to restart, reflecting on things that need to get up and running as soon as next Monday back. My wife is a daycare provider, and so she has a daycare business in our home, which also restarted this week. So it's in everyone's best interest, myself included, to get up, start the day at a regular time, and to, yesterday, for example, I was at the school building, just taking a walk around, seeing what's going on, doing a little bit of things related to cleaning up some holiday. Sorry, not fundraising, but we had a donation of a number of new and used clothing items. So anyway, just little bits and pieces to get myself sort of back in sort of the regular routine of things, and just again reconnecting. Like, I mean, our head custodian and daily custodian were in yesterday. We had teams of care providers who were doing a day camp at our school. So just reconnecting with people. It's not just about what has to be done. It's who you're doing it with, and just providing that reassurance and that connection, which is top of mind for me as I coach educators and coach families and kids and coach school leaders like myself about how we're contemplating returning to school after sort of the second back to school, when you think about September, and then we think about, after the winter break.
I love you said it's not just about what needs to be done, but it's who you're doing with too. I think that's really important, and starting that connection so that it's not like, hey, on Monday we show up and we haven't had any contact at all. We're kind of starting fresh, right? I also think a little, you kind of just said it in the mix of things there, but I think it's really powerful when you have this a little bit of time before you have to get back into your regular routine on Monday, that you are back and you're getting yourself back into your sleep-in routine. I think often we're like, well, I got to take advantage of every day that I got left and sleep in, and that's fine. If you want to do that, sleep in. But, to get into a routine of sleeping, it takes multiple days. I don't know the science behind it, but it's at least 2 to 3 days minimum for you to get back into that. So starting to get yourself into that, waking up, I think is really is important, because you were talking about, you said in the morning that you're reserving your mornings for work, and I was like, yeah, but what's mornings, Brad? Is that like wake up at 11 and 12, go to 11 to 12, and then it's no longer me? But it sounds like you're getting up at a regular time, as if you would almost go to school, or actually going in and putting some time in. So then I assume the rest of the day is family time, yes, or relaxation time, or whatever
it's
it looks
a 5:30. Yeah, 5:30 wake up is our is our normal wake up time, Jeff. So it's a 5:30 wake up. 5:30 to 6 is coffee on and getting some breakfast started, and then getting ready for each of our days. And I'm seeing a comment too from one of our visitors saying that they find the second day back is the hardest, and the first day they're excited. I get that, because everyone is just sort of, again, there's that emotional buildup, or unfortunately sometimes it turns into an emotional jam up, Jeff, where there's lots of emotions and lots of thoughts and feelings around how can I, is everything going to be okay? And sometimes we're just sort of running on fumes on that first Monday back, especially that sleep schedule, as you said. I mean, educators are rightly coached to commit as fully as they can to making this gift of time work for them, work for you. And what I'd say, Jeff, is figure out what works for you, and you do you. Just because your routines, or just because your commitment of time or dedication or energy or focus may be different from another educator, do what works for you and what works for your family and what serves you well. Because whenever you are able to serve yourself well, you give that boost of confidence that, hey, I'm taking time to look after myself. That's a little bit of that self-compassion piece. And the second thing is that ultimately what serves you well will serve the people in your care well, whether it's in a classroom or in a school office or whatever it is.
I love the focus on figuring out what works for you, because someone listens going, really, Brad, you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning on a week where you don't have to be back yet? Like, I'm never going to do, and that's okay. Like, just because Brad does that does not mean, you already mentioned, you have other circumstances in your life that makes it actually not, I don't want to say easier, but makes sense for your family, because your wife's business also started back up. So like, this makes sense. It might not make sense for you if you're at home and your spouse or your loved ones, whatever, are also not back to things, and you've got a lot of time. Like, soak it up. You got to figure out what's right for you. Same thing when we talk about like, implementing different things. Or I'm going to talk specifically about the grid method, right? We did a series at the end of December about the grid method. A big thing with the grid method of being flexible and figuring out how this looks in your classroom, what works for you and your students. Don't just do it the way Ray or Chad or Dave or Katie say it. Like, it's got to be for you. And I think that's the same here. So I think that's a really important point there. Now, I was gonna ask something that I lost. Oh, okay. So going back, we got people mentioning, that the second day is the hardest. I totally get that, because I could see the excitement going, right. And then it's like, okay, we're back. So why was I excited about this? You're back into things, right? And all the stuff comes back. From your viewpoint and your vantage point and your experience as a teacher and obviously as a building leader for a number of years now, come back, and you kind of touched on this being basically like the second start of school. Like, you really are starting, quote unquote, over again. For the kids, it was a lifetime ago that they were in school, especially the young ones. Like, it's so easy, like the time is so long for them. What in your experience has been the most difficult or maybe this is multiple things, part about coming back at this point in the year? Like, what are the, whether this, and I think there's a lot of mental, and you talk about the mental and logistics things, but, and maybe that's it, but are there other things related to the way the students come back, the way the staff come back, or whatever, the way the community comes back this time of the year? What are the most difficult things in your mind?
Jeff, first of all, first thing that comes to mind is just overcoming the inertia of a change in daily routines from go, 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 where our lives are ruled by the bells and we turn on our heel when a bell rings or when a buzzer rings or when a phone rings, to, many of us do have that gift of time for a week or more to turn off the bells, to prioritize our own flow of the day, which is very unusual for educators in any line of work. So it's overcoming that inertia. And I think the emotional journey that a lot of us go through, regardless of our walk of life, is shifting from that mode where I'm putting my needs and priorities first to shifting to, okay, someone else's priorities are going to take the lead right now, whether it's a bell schedule or whether it's your daily agenda or what your team has cooked up for you. So that's shifting from inertia or shifting from personal priorities to shifting to community priorities. The second thing is that as much as holidays are meant to be a time to restore energy, they can also be a time when a lot of energy is depleted. And so what can happen is we return to work after some time off. And this goes for the kids we serve, the adults we serve, the parents and caregivers, as well as ourselves as educators. We may have expended more energy than we think, especially if we, like I typically do, have an emotional and logistical jam up the weekend before getting back to school. A lot of energy, mental, emotional, physical, is expended in getting sort of ourselves ready for that back to school, to welcome kids back into our spaces and buildings. And there can also be a lot of tension. So when there's low energy and high tension, that can be a recipe for, well, really dysregulated behavior. So we're trying to keep ourselves in balance, and kids are trying to keep themselves in balance. And remember that they're trying to get back into the same kind of, or trying to overcome the same kind of inertia that we have. That is, for the last 2 weeks, the schedule will have been different. Their family or community priorities will have been different. And now they're sort of back on our clock as well. So I just think we just have to welcome everybody back in with compassion and with patience, and just, why not just name that it's going to take some time for us to reconnect and to kind of get back into the groove. But the personal connections are the things that I think we want to continue to prioritize, Jeff. The personal connections, the things that kind of grease that positivity in our classrooms and our school communities is what we want to prioritize.
I love it. Brad, the next segment here on Wednesdays is a teachable moment, but I feel like we're already there. So I'm going to play the video and pretend like you said all that after this. So that was powerful. There's going to be a lot of clips we need to pull out of that particular thing. And I think that's really important to consider. I want to jump in because some other folks are leading us right into what we were going to talk about next. So I think it's perfect. As always, our community is like 3 steps ahead of us. So we're going to jump into a teachable moment now. All right, we are back with your Wednesday Wake Up. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Or you might be listening on the Teach Better Talk podcast as well. Wherever you are, if you hit a like, we appreciate that. Drop a comment. I don't care if you're live or watching 3 days, 10 days from now. Drop a comment and let us know what's going on. If you're on the podcast, make sure you subscribe. And if you leave a rating and review, we'd appreciate that as well. We are having so far a really great conversation. I saw some comments coming through that kind of led to where we were talking about possibly going in this teachable moment thing. I don't want to sidestep the inertia comment. And we're getting in what you were talking about there. I think it was really, really powerful. And we have some people that were loving that in the comments as well. I want to say hi and good morning really quick this morning to people dropping in. Tammy, good to see you this morning. Janelle, Stacy. There's a couple folks on Jillian's here, a couple other folks that names aren't popping up because Facebook likes to hide them. It is what it is, but we're happy you're here. We're glad you're here. Brad, a few folks are touching on, I think I'm trying to say who was the first one. I think it was who was the first one that does? I think it was Stacy, maybe the first one that mentioned the idea of one word. And this has become, I don't know how long it's been, but I'm thinking of at least 3 to 5 years ago was the first time that I heard this, the idea of choosing one word that sort of guides you for the year. And a lot. It seems to be super, super popular and common in education. I think it's due to some of what we're talking about now. Is this idea of overcoming the inertia and getting a new year. It's a reset. It's kind of like a restart of the year again. And we set this idea of a one word to guide us, to be our guiding light for the year coming. So you had mentioned when we chatted just briefly before about talking through this and maybe having a conversation around it. So tell me about, I'm assuming, I didn't ask you, I should have, but I didn't. I'm assuming you do this as well, and you have already chosen your word, or else I'm going to be disappointed on you bringing it up.
Jeff, just get settled in your seat and prepare for disappointment, my friend, because I have
I do it every morning, buddy. That's what I do.
Exactly. Not yet chosen a word. I have done that for the past 2 years. I was really intrigued, and our colleague and friend Lindsay Titus through Teach Better led a wonderful learning opportunity for our ambassadors 2 years running on choosing that one word. So there's a few things that I'm working through personally in terms of sort of that one word. But what it comes down to for me, Jeff, is it's about taking some time intentionally to reflect on your values. What are your non-negotiable values that you want to both guide you personally? And part of the one word movement or opportunity for me too is connecting your values to others. And so when we see on social media people posting their one word, what you're seeing there is there's really some cool vulnerability and some cool connectivity happening there where individuals are saying, I've taken some time to reflect. This is the value that I feel is meaningful in my life, in my personal professional work right now. And I want to share it out to you to let you know where I'm coming from. Maybe there's an aspect too of connectedness. Maybe that resonates with you. Maybe it motivates you to do your reflection on your values. I've recently worked through, just prior to the new year, an activity that comes out of Brene Brown's Dare to Lead. And in that book, there is a list, Jeff, of probably 80 to 90 values that Brene Brown challenges us to reflect on. And from those 80 to 90 values, her challenge is to narrow that list down to one or two. It's a really helpful process of clarifying values and reflecting on what are the non-negotiables for you. And then the idea there is once those values have been selected, with every critical moment, whether it's a moment of stress, a moment of anxiety, a moment of difficulty, with every critical moment that comes along, you have the opportunity, if your values are that clear, to say, is my thinking, is my decision, is my action leading me towards or away from those values? And it's so human. I mean, as human beings, Jeff, we're always going to make decisions that either intentionally or unintentionally lead us away from values because we want to keep ourselves safe and secure. We want to reduce the amount of anxiety and stress in our lives. We want to increase the safety. Sometimes those safe choices, though, will lead us away from, even temporarily, away from those core values. So whether it's a one word or whether it's working through a list like Brene Brown or our friend and colleague Eli Casaus just posted last night or this morning that as an alternative to a one word, he is choosing to create sort of a vision board. So it's a rather than a singular focus on one value or one priority, it's a collection of words or images that kind of you can wrap it around yourself, if you get my meaning. Like you can kind of surround yourself with these images and priorities to help guide you. And that also gives you a little bit of what I call bouncy boundaries, where you as long as you are gently correcting your course back towards those values or towards those visions as Eli is taking, there's no wrong way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. I think that's part of where the emotional jam up in our work as educators comes in, Jeff, is I think that very often we are seeking the right answer because we are used to being relied to be the people in the know with the answers. And so, this process can be about recognizing that there is a spectrum, there's a range of correct responses or helpful responses, no matter what the task is in front of you.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up Eli's post and sharing as well, because I think we can get hung up on the idea that it needs to be one word, and it's not necessarily the fact that it's one word. It's the purpose, which is what you just rolled through. It's the purpose of the reflection and defining your values. What's important to you? What do you need to focus on? What's going to be sort of your guide for the year or years to come? I'm pretty sure for like the last 3 years, my word has continued to just be appreciate, to appreciate all the things and people and stuff. But when I think about this, my mind goes to business, and really when you think about your one word or whatever it is, your vision board, it is your it is the same as like a company's vision, company's mission. And really, I'm thinking vision higher end and their overall objectives that become that guiding light. And to your point, become the thing that you can look to and say, am I making this decision? And if I make this decision, is it taking me toward or away from that? And not necessarily because if it's taking you toward a way that makes a decision for you, but because at least then you know and you reflect in a moment to understand what that decision is doing for you. Is it taking you there or not? And it almost becomes like this second person, this coach, this teammate, whatever you want to call it, in the room with you, having the conversation as you go through everything from really little simple decisions to very important big decisions to look and this is this guiding me. And I actually think, as I'm saying this, that your word or your focus being the same over multiple years, that's okay too. We get really stuck on like year to year things. It doesn't have to be that, right? It can continue to be the same focus because we don't always get there. We don't always accomplish things. We don't always progress the way that we hope or think we're going to in 12 months. So I think that's really important. So I love that. I also want to touch on, you talk about the Brene Brown and the, how many values was it?
I'm going to guess it seems like a list of 80 or 90 values.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, and to try and narrow that down to one or two is super valuable, but also very difficult because we tend to, as humans, see that list. And I got to imagine she doesn't have 80. There's not a whole lot of bad values on that list. I imagine they're all considered what we would typically consider a good or at least decent enough value. And so often we look at that list and we're like, well, yeah, I want to be that. I should 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 be that. To narrow down to what's important to you and to remove the what do I want other people to think of me, or what do I think other people think I should be, and what does the world think that that should be my focus versus what is actually truly important to me is really, really difficult and really powerful process to go through. So I just wanted to touch on that. I think that's really cool. I'm seeing some other folks in there. Lori's in the comments. Darren, good morning, brother. Always good to see you. If you've selected your one word or if you're laying out a vision board, whatever, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let us know. I know someone mentioned it just a little bit ago. Lori Ann said joy, inspired by Jillian Du Bois, of course, joy. And of course, being inspired by Jillian. So Brad, so where are you in the process, Brad? Are you going to get to a 1 year word? Is that your plan, or are you going the vision route, or are you just focusing on the values and that's going to be the thing that leads you? Like, what's your process right now? Where are you at in that?
Well, I'm really glad, Jeff, that you hit on the word process. And I want to think back to the fact that it doesn't have to be a decision. It can be a process that continues to evolve. It can be a process that continues to be shaped by your experiences. So I did go through that list of values, and it was very helpful. And it took several days for me to keep coming back to the list. And I was able to narrow it down to two. And the two that I was able to narrow it down to always come back to that pivot point that we were talking about, whether decisions or actions or choices are leading you towards or away from your values. And so I thought a lot about the decisions that I make just as a human being, well, as a personal, a partner, a parent, a community member, but also as an educator. And the values that I came up with are kindness and service. So I've always said to others that service is sort of my heartbeat. Service is my battery. So I'm energized, I'm empowered by providing service to others. And hey, I get a lift from seeing how my actions, my words, my encouragement, the things I do and say lift others. And so I get a lift by lifting others. And so that's always service. Service. And I've also recognized that there are aspects of my life, both personal and professional, where I can continue to enhance the service. I can continue to be more mindful of the service that I'm providing to and for others. The other thing, Jeff, is kindness. And I always want to make sure that my choices are guided by kindness and a lot of the other values in there, like there were love and compassion. And so no matter how you wrap it up, it's a matter of serving others and supporting others in a way that also restores and supports you, where you can see, or maybe you can see or hopefully anticipate the positive things that you're putting out in the world. So rather than one word, I kind of see that to me as a cycle of two words: kindness and service that are kind of self-reinforcing. And again, that comes back to that pivot point. So when you're trying to clarify your values, you're trying to reach a point where this is what I believe and this is what I stand for. It doesn't have to be rigid either. It can be something that is iterative. I mean, as you experience and as you experiment with these values or that pivot point, you can see, is this really what I stand for? Is this really what I mean, and this is really what I want to put out into the world. But process is key. It doesn't have to be a one and done. It can be something that's iterative. And again, as Lindsay Titus will say, it's not like on January 1st when the clock turns over to midnight, you've got to have that word. What is important is the process of clarifying values, and again, opportunities to connect with others through that process to see what support you can offer and what support can return to you.
Yeah, and I want to continue to emphasize the process piece. So on my TikTok, I talk more business stuff. That's sort of the audience that I work there. And when was it? It was maybe the week before Christmas, or maybe it was the week after. I don't know. I did one that was about, if you don't have your business plan and you haven't set your goals and laid out everything for 2023, my thing was like, you're okay. It's fine. Like you still got I think it was a week. I'm like, you still got a week left of the year, but also like you could do it in March and it's fine. Like from now till then, you just keep doing what you're doing and everything's fine. And I think the process here is like you did, and Lindsay said it, like you don't have to have it now. It's already the 4th. So like you're already past the 1, right? But that doesn't matter. You might not get to this. You might not figure this out until March, until June, whatever. Don't get fixated on the 12-month or this half of the year or that half of the year. It's the process that is the actual powerful. Putting the word out is great. And you mentioned a lot of the great things about it. There's vulnerability in that. There's connection to other people. There's ways that we can support each other stuff, but the process, and someone else mentioned it in the comments, the process is the actual, really the value for you as an individual, and therefore the value to others that you serve with kindness and things of that nature. It's the process. It's the reflection, the digging into oneself, blocking out all the other noise and the opinions of others and focusing on you. Or if you're doing it with your spouse, or your loved one, or your family, or whoever, like that process is what's really, really powerful. And that doesn't matter when that happens, whether it's January or July. And honestly, I'd argue that it'd be good to do it multiple times throughout the year. Because to your point, it also doesn't need to be rigid. It can change too. There's nothing wrong with setting a word today and getting to March and going, you know what? I've done some more reflection. I've had some more experiences. I've had some more conversations. And I'm not sure that's actually where I should be focused. I actually should be focused here. This is actually more important to me and my family because either circumstances have changed or I have new information or because I've changed, because we do that as humans. So I think that's really important too. So I love the focus on the process there. So you are in the mix of that process. You've done a decent bit, but you're going to have 2 words, which is great. Now, do you do a vision board? Do you get into that? We mentioned Eli, and I've done them in the past. We've actually, when the team was much, much smaller, we used to do them with the team as set and really when we were looking at like dreaming big for the team and what we want to do and stuff. Yep. Do you do vision boards? Is that something that you do or your family does? Is that something you've ever gotten into?
Not personally, not for personal value setting. Actually, for practical applications like a kitchen reno, or
Sure.
we're doing some visioning right now at our school site in terms of reimagining what our school foyer could be, like not just what it looks like, but what space what space and what values and priorities it communicates to anybody coming in to our school building. Thinking of just little restful spots for staff or students to sit and reflect and work, or clarifying the values of our school, around aspects of kindness, aspects of what makes our community unique, and what every visitor to the school can anticipate. So in practical settings, I've used those vision boards and even shifted electronically, like using like a Google Jamboard, for example. This could be something that educators could do in their spaces with their staff members or with their students as well. Jeff, is reflecting on where we have come and reflecting on where we want to continue to go. Not necessarily like a 180, we got to stop this and start this, but how do we want to continue to refine our approaches? Where do we want to put our energies? What gets us excited about coming to school every day, even small reasons, and using a Jamboard or using something collaborative, even cutting and pasting, Jeff, just that visioning opportunity for you in collaboration with, in conversation with a class or a staff group or a subgroup, a committee like that. That's where that connection comes in.
Yeah, I remember doing them. Gosh, when I used to run restaurants, we would do vision boards with, we would bring in like 50 magazines and we're literally cutting it and pasting like actual. So I remember doing that. I don't do them anymore. I haven't done one for a while. I've actually for the last think this is my 4th year doing it. I've used a process by Hal Elrod. I don't know if you know Hal Elrod. He wrote the book Miracle Morning, best-selling author. And he's got a process for it. It's a 10-year projection type thing, which I don't really like going way out, but from a personal life, I do look a little bit, and then it's a breakdown. But you dive into what's important, what you're trying to do. It's a lot of that vision work, but then breaking down into logistical work now and stuff. So I go that way. So like this is another process, another piece where it's find what works for you. You don't have to create a one word. You don't have to do a vision board. You don't have to have a big vision or a big whatever. Find what works for you so that you are, again, it goes back to the important part is the process of finding time to reflect on whatever is important to you and trying to figure out how and what is going to guide you to improve your life, whatever that looks like. So I think that's really important. Continually focus on that process. So,
and I'm thinking too about people in my life, like you, Jeff, and like members of our Teach Better team and family and colleagues. Is I think maybe not misunderstood, but maybe not fully understood opportunity in that clarification is that power of connection. So it allows you to be vulnerable with others and say, here's what I'm thinking at this moment in my life, personally and professionally, in all of my spheres of influence. Would you be a support? Would you be an accountability partner? Like I was thinking about your connection to business. I mean, that visioning and those values of business are so key because they drive every aspect of what that business provides. And it provides constant checkpoints about whether you're meeting not only your own needs and expectations, but the needs and expectations of your clients, the people that you serve. It's the same in education. I mean, if I say to my school community, and I'm going to put this out, I guess I'm putting it out right now, my values and priorities are kindness and service, then I can reasonably expect that, or I want to encourage people to hold me to account, but like not accountability, like you messed up. Accountability, like it appears you're at a pivot point here, Brad, and I know that your values are kindness and service. How can I support some decisions that will help you and help us to stay aligned to those values? So it's that connection is key. This is not something that necessarily has to be done or should be done in isolation or as something that says, look, I've chosen a one word. This is, it's not a spotlight moment to me. It's a moment where we're putting our thoughts and our values in a process of clarification where we have an opportunity to come together with others, whether in a business community or an educational community, to really help each other stay aligned, help each other when there are inevitable setbacks, because there's going to be setbacks, and finally help each other continue to I call it course correction, gently correct our course back rather than veering too far one way or the other, just kind of gently coming back to the center where we're more aligned, not precisely or necessarily or finally aligned, but more aligned with those values. For me, it's that connection.
Yeah, I love it. And I think it's almost like the sharing of the one word or value or vision or whatever to whoever, whether it's publicly or to your small community or to whatever, that's the start. It's not the spotlight moment. It's the, hey, this is the start. Now the work begins. And I'm sharing this so that you know the journey that I'm trying to go on. So that, to your point, so if you see me a little off track, you can nudge me over a little bit and remind me, because I might forget, because sometimes life gets in the way. I think that's really important. I love it. I also just want to touch, like when you talk about the business stuff, like your classroom's a business, your school's a business. It's just a different way. The money you make is the lives you change, right? And that's the output. But your students and your community and stuff are that. So like sharing it with them and let them know is the same as when a company tries to share or should be sharing their vision and their mission, what's important to them. So like anytime I talk about that, I always hope people take it that way, that you can just flip that right into your classroom, because you're constantly so like that. Teachers are the best salespeople in the world, period. Anyway, all right, let's I love that. This was a good conversation, man. Let's highlight someone in our community real quick, and then we'll wrap up with a challenge and send everybody off for their morning. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Welcome back to your Wednesday Wake Up with Teach Better team. We are still streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. I'm Jeff Gargas. That good-looking fellow over there is Brad Hughes, all the way from Canada. And we're having a good conversation this morning. Part of what we do on Wednesday morning about this time is to highlight someone in our community, show some love for some of the amazing people that are in our community. Brad, I'm going to let you run with this one, because I'm like, hey, who do you want to highlight? And you were like, this guy. right away. You mentioned that you had a good conversation, I believe, at the conference and stuff. So I'm going to throw his info up on screen. I'm going to let you chat and share with us why we wanted to highlight this gentleman right here.
100%. Ken Ehrman is our Wednesday Wake Up community feature. And Ken is an instructional coach. He's an educator, I think most recently teaching 5th grade. He's a speaker. He's a consultant. He's a podcaster. He's a member of our Teach Better podcast network. And Ken, wow, I just loved getting to know Ken at our recent Teach Better 22 in Akron, Jeff. Like, Ken showed up each and every day with great conversation, with great energy, but you could almost just feel his eagerness to connect and improve your experience with him, even in a small way, with every single interaction. Like, Ken and I had never met, but he was present, he was positive, he was engaged. Ken is the co-host of the Powered Up podcast on the Teach Better Network, and he and his co-host are celebrating 100 episodes. 100th episode that's no small feat. That's a commitment. I think Ken and his partner have committed to a weekly podcast, and that's really worth celebrating. So as you can see on the slide there, he says, I love creating environments to empower students to take total ownership. Students develop a love for learning, increased work ethic, and abilities to make independent decisions. And Ken specializes in professional learning, where he can help individuals, classrooms, and school communities shift that focus from, we own it as educators, to students own the learning. And he's a fantastic listen. He's a fantastic person to meet and get to know. And I was just so impressed with and grateful for the opportunity I got to know Ken at the conference. So definitely worth a shout out. Congratulations to Ken and his podcast co-host for 100 episodes. And he's at Ken Ehrman, EHRMANN. Congratulations to Ken.
Yeah, and as two guys who know something a little bit about podcasting, 100 episodes, yeah, that is not something to gloss over. That's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into podcasting. And I found even more so, in my opinion, when there's two of you. You would think you'd split the work, but that just means there's more audio to edit. There's more opportunities for mistakes. There's more, right? There's more logistics to get in mind and stuff like that. So, like, congratulations to both of them. And we love having them on the network. They're fairly recently new. Been on for a little while now on the network, but we love hosting and being connected with so many amazing podcasts. I don't know how many we're at now, but there's a lot of them on there. Josh would know. Do you know off the top of your head? I don't even know if Josh knows at this point. Do you know how many we have?
I'm going to say we're
30.
I think we're approaching 40 programs.
Okay.
And a process too, Jeff, of both celebrating and we'll talk about clarifying purpose. I mean, Joshua Stamper has been instrumental in helping our podcast network members really clarify what it means to be a member of that network and that community. And so there's a give and a get. I mean, there's the expectation is that the expectation is that the content is valuable, relevant, and rich for our listeners, but there's a lot of gets too. And the get is the connection. We've got, that connective support through the podcast network. And I certainly am very grateful that Ken and the Powered Up are part of that podcast network.
Teachbetter.com/podcasts with an S at the end there to find all those shows. Link out there and get connected. Ken, appreciate you being part of our network. Appreciate you being part of our community. And thank you for being at the conference to talk with Brad, because I know he was very lonely because I was not there.
I was very, very lonely. And Ken made we had our podcasters row there, Jeff, and to talk about showing up. Ken showed up to podcasters row every day to connect with fellow podcasters. But again, also just his sincerity and his humility in saying, hey, I want to connect. I want to get to know you. I want to know how I can serve you. Just a wonderful person to connect with.
Awesome. And podcasters row, I really missed that. Like, we have 15 different podcasting all weekend long.
Oh, it was so cool.
We're not talking about the conference anymore. I'm bitter. We're gonna move on. Let's jump in. We're gonna do a quick transition video, Brad. We're gonna get in. We're gonna give a challenge out for you to go for the rest of this week to get the most out of this week, and then we'll send you on your way for a great Wednesday. All right, we're about to wrap up our Wednesday Wake Up here with Teach Better Team on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Brad Hughes, it has been so amazing having you here with me this morning. I really appreciate you jumping on. Let's, one of the things that we like to do at the very end of our Wednesday show is to share some sort of challenge for our audience and our community and ourselves to take for the rest of this week to make the most out of this week. So, Brad, what do you got for us this morning, man?
First, Jeff, it's self-compassion. It's recognizing that a return to school is going to be energy intensive, and so when energy is low and when the stakes are high, it can be a recipe for that dysregulation. You just kind of feel out of sorts, and your kids are too. So the first challenge is just to remember to take a beat, to take a breath, and to be kind and patient with yourself as an individual, and to really seek that calm that will allow others around you to kind of, find their way back to that balance. And finding your way back, we talked about it before, Jeff, calling it course corrections. The new year and an opportunity to return to the classroom, to our school sites, is an opportunity for reflection on the successes, and also reflection and goal setting on where we want to course correct to keep things aligned with our personal values and goals, but also with our community and classroom and curricular values and goals. Never forget that the connection is the foundation. So the reconnection, the prioritizing the reconnection with your stakeholders, whether they're your children or your colleagues or your parents, community members, whether they're your superintendents or senior admin, that connection is key. And so there's often a hustle to get back into the rigor of the curricular aspects of what happens in schools. It can also happen through and because of the connections that we reestablish. So I guess a number of challenges in there, Jeff, just starting with oneself, self-compassion, patience, finding one's calm, seeking to establish or reestablish priorities, and reconnect with the people that are in a position to help you make it happen, and just trying to stay aligned to whatever values and whatever goals you and your community have in mind.
You are so good at this.
Thank you.
Like, you are really good at this, my friend. That is a great challenge. I hope. Sorry, I just want to have someone, Brad. No, really, you really are. I love that. That is awesome. What a challenge to leave it off with. Brad, really do appreciate you jumping on and having some fun with me this morning, and really sharing a ton of wisdom. We had some really good conversations. I really thought this was just going to be a goofball all morning long. I feel like we actually had some really good conversations, and I appreciate that about you, that we can have fun, but really hit some really meaningful conversations. And I think the comments and everyone watching solidify that and confirm that for us. So that is your challenge. Take it with you. If you need anything, please reach out to us. Let us know. Everything's over at teachbetter.com. We hope you have an amazing, amazing rest of your week and the start of your year. And if you need anything, let us know. And Brad, I'm going to end us with the classic. Let's get out there and let's teach better.